Hey everyone, happy Friday. So glad to be back with you. Hopefully, you've all had a good week and are ready for the weekend. Um, Here in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, we're facing a typical spring. Um, it's overcast, but it's almost 60 degrees right now, so we're taking that. We know summer's on the way. Can't wait. Um, so before we get started, a couple just some housekeeping notes. First, this is something I've decided I'm going to start doing a little more regularly. Got the nice name for the feature, the Friday Five on LinkedIn Live, so that maybe not every week, but more often than not on a Friday, I'm going to share five things that I think we should be covering or thinking about or talking about. Um, so if there's any topics that you are interested in, put them in the chat or send them to me, through LinkedIn. Um, and I'd love to hear about them. And I'll try and address those as we go forward. Um, Also, I do have a YouTube channel. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to go to the BTOM Watkins site and subscribe, watch the videos, comment. I love the social interaction. Um, so let's get started with today's topic. So, five things we should have learned from the pandemic but didn't. Um, Now, a couple things that I'll put the caveats up front. Um, these are lessons learned. I'm kind of painting with a broad brush. Some people have learned some of these or all of these lessons and others and are doing quite well. I think overall, I'm not seeing these lessons have permeated the industry and the professions as well as they should have, which is a shame. Because as bad as the pandemic was and as horrible it was as it was for all of us, it gave us a chance to learn some things, gave us a chance to grow. There were a lot of things that happened that we can learn from and should have learned from. Another caveat is I'm talking about the professional world. Obviously, the pandemic impacted society and politics and all those things, and I'm not talking about those here. I'm purely talking about from the professional side when I talk about these five things. Uh, Now, one of the things that I like to point out to people, which surprised me at the time, probably surprised a lot of people, was you know during 2020 when that pandemic was kind of in full boom. We didn't know what was going on. There was a lot of panic, a lot of information that we weren't unsure of that was changing. Employee engagement actually went up. It was a small bump, but a significant bump in that regard, which made no sense, right? It was like, wait a second, there's a lot of people either losing their jobs, getting furloughed. There is, unknowns. There's fear. There's all this stuff going on. Horrific changes in how we had to work and function. How is employee engagement going up? And as I thought about it, I think what happened was as companies reacted to it, um, they started doing some things. They started doing really these five things that I'm going to talk about. Um, and that raised engagement because it wasn't necessarily pandemic related. Those are things people want all the time. Okay. So it really was kind of interesting to think about that, how engagement went up. Now, since then, it's dropped back down, which is where I say, we noticed, man, people aren't learning these lessons. They kind of went back to the way it was before. And, that's for a variety of reasons, but that truly happened. So engagement went back down. So as we talk about engagement, one of the things I think we need to realize is that these are key things to it. These aren't pandemic things, these aren't emergency things. These five lessons I'm going to teach should be permanent type lessons. Um, so I'm going to start going into the five right now, but just so you know, please feel free to put your comments or your thoughts in the chat. Um, love to love for this to be as interactive as possible. So I will keep an eye on the chats and respond to them as I can. Um, so the first thing that we saw during the pandemic that has gone back down is increased communication, as there was so many unknowns. organizations went and said, we need to communicate a lot. We need to have a lot of town hall meetings. We need to have a lot of divisional meetings to let people know what's happening because things are happening so fast and everything was so unsure. And what we learned at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, we learned the exact opposite at 3 o'clock on Wednesday, type of thing. So companies were really over communicating. They were saying a lot. They were, you know, having weekly meetings where the CEO was saying, "Hey, this is what's happening. This is where we are." They were oversharing, which is great. One of the things I think people like is information. They want to know what's going on. They want to be able to take that information. And one of the things that I teach people a lot and that I think is good to remember is when you don't communicate as a leader, everyone else kind of fills in that vacuum of a story however they want, and usually it's not as positive or not the message you want to get out. So when you're not saying things, they're going, "Oh, I wonder if there's layoffs or if I wonder this." They're filling in this gap. They're filling that vacuum. But during the pandemic, businesses were like, "You know what? We've got to communicate a lot." Sometimes there were daily emails going out. The company that I was working for at the time, there were daily emails that went out and said, "Here's what we learned yesterday. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what we're going to do. Boom, boom, boom." It was a lot to absorb, but it took away, it filled in that vacuum. It didn't allow me to fill it in. When they started to do layoffs, they were very clear. It was a long meeting. They said, "Look, here's exactly why we're going to do it. Here's how it's working. Here's why it's working." Okay. They went through everything's in painstaking detail because everyone was so unsure. And that's critical. So once the pandemic kind of settled down and things started going back to normal, the communication stopped. They went back to their old cadence of communication, thinking if I say this once or I don't think it, they'll just know it. And you know, people suffered and people didn't like it. They went, "Hey, before I was getting all this information, now you're not telling me anything." That's not good. That's not what they like. So the first lesson is really keep that communication going. Say things over and over again. Say things in multiple channels. Find ways to get it out there. The little cute way that I describe to people is say things so many times that people can repeat your words. When they can finish your sentences for you, you've probably communicated enough. I say probably, maybe not. But you have to be able to get that out there. So, lesson one is really that increased communication. Lesson two is really to focus on that well being. What we saw was a lot of companies started saying, "Hey, we know the stress it's causing on you. We know the fear, the emotional stress. We know the physical stress. Uh, when you've got a family in one house, they can't go anywhere, they can't do anything. They're spending all their time together. It's you know, it's great from a family perspective. It's also not that great because, well, you're spending all your time together. There's no outlet. So companies started focusing on things. They were having things like virtual social hours, um, virtual yoga classes or meditation classes. Started Managers started talking more about it. How are you doing? How are things going? Not from a work perspective, from a home perspective. You started seeing videos from people at home with kids and crazy atmospheres and things like that. And what people like that authenticity. People like that freedom from it. They also know felt cared for. When a manager said, "Hey, before we talk about any work stuff, how's everything going? Are the kids doing okay with their school? What kind of stresses is causing you? If you do you need to take, a longer lunch and then go for walks?" There was very much a caring, and it was great, right? That was what should have been done. But again, that should be done all the time. As a manager, as a people manager, you want to connect with people, right? You want to let them know that you care about them as people. That's what employees want. They want to know that they're respected and cared about as a human being, that they're not just a clog in the wheel of the company, right? They're not a replaceable entity. They're Brian, they're Lori, they're, you know, Billy, whoever it is. They want to know that they're doing that way. So companies spend a lot of time doing it, telling managers to do it, actually saying managers, have this call, have this conversation, check in with your people. Um, I heard stories from some people who were saying, when we worked in the same office, I didn't talk to my manager as much as I do now because they're calling me or sending me a chat or we're doing a quick Zoom. That was great. People felt heard and communicated with. But again, all of a sudden we started going back to normal and that went away. Some people still care. Some people was focused on it, and companies have done a pretty good job of saying, you know what, we need to increase that a little bit. We need to start offering yoga classes or meditation or mental health benefits or all these things. But as a manager level, it really starts with you because number one, you're the closest contact with this person. So when they say to you, hey, I have this issue, right? They want to talk to you about it. And you can say, I care about that as an individual, and I can work with you on that, and I can help you do actionable. Again, no manager is a therapist, but a manager can listen to things and go, oh, you're having that issue with an elderly parent. And maybe we can adjust the work schedule, or we can do this. And that helped. Um, but most of the time we went back to normal and it was like, oh, okay. I don't have to ask as much. I don't have to care as much. This is what the whole return to work issue is. I don't think it's so much where we are. Most professionals I know say, you know what, there's times I need to or want to be in the office, and I'm more than willing to do it. It was this fact that, you know, when I don't need to be there and you're forcing me there, that's not focusing on my well-being. I can't take my walk. I can't do my exercise. I can't eat healthy, all those things, right? So, the second thing that we should be doing much more of that we did during the pandemic, focus on everyone's well-being. So, again, just a reminder before I go on to number three, put your thoughts and comments in the chat. Love to hear what you're thinking about what I'm saying. Um, Number three, fascinating one that I saw a lot of companies doing a lot more, particularly executives and managers. I don't know. Admitting, I don't know. This is new. This is something we've never faced before. I don't know. We're going to figure it out together. Now, as a leader, that kind of goes against what we're thinking. We're supposed to be the backdrop. We're supposed to be the comfort. They want to know that we're in charge, that we're leading, that we know what's going on. But they also want to know, hey, I really don't know. And that's an honest vulnerability. When the pandemic was going on, it first started, oh, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks, and then we think everything's going to be back to normal. Then it was, oh, we're here in a couple months. And you heard executives say, I don't know. The information is changing daily. The business is changing daily. The people are changing daily. What we're learning about is changing daily. So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But what I do know is this. And here's how we're going to react now. And then we're going to be nimble. So you heard a lot of people saying, I don't know. When is this going to end and we're going to go back to the office? I don't know. But here's what I do know. Um, Again, so that was a huge shift. And a lot of executives struggle with that, right? Because again, they're supposed to have the answers. They're making the decisions. They tend to get to these positions by being type A personalities, charging, go, 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 go. And all of a sudden they're sitting back going, I don't know, that feels very uncomfortable for them. And a lot of them admitted it. Look, I don't know. And it scares me. It's keeping me up at night. It's doing this and it's doing that. And that was great, right? Because while you don't want someone who doesn't know anything leading you, knowing that, hey, this is a new situation. I don't know what's happening. That gives you comfort. That's a real person. They're struggling, and you're not thinking, oh, I'm the only one who doesn't know what's going on. I'm the only one worried about this stuff. All those things that we learn, oh, you're putting me on furlough. Are you bringing people back? I don't know. But our intention is yes. We believe that this is going to go past and then we're going to be able to bring it back. But we don't know when and we don't know, how many and what pace, anything like that. So really that whole admitting I don't know we did really well during the pandemic because nobody knew, right? Um, but then we kind of went back to the old ways of saying things. I'm thinking of the current layoffs going on right now. You know, Facebook has a lot of problems. I would not list them as a company that is um, managerial sound, executive sound. Um, but they're doing like, oh, we're laying off 10,000 people. And then they come back and they go, okay, we're laying off another 3,000. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's head is like, okay, when's the next cut coming? Where if the executives would say, "Hey, I don't know." Now, if they would have said, "Look, we're laying off 10,000 and we don't know if that's going to be enough." Now, is that a bad message sent? Probably, right? I wouldn't suggest that. But at the same time, I would say, you know what? This isn't we don't know how this company is going to look in a year. And we're adjusting and we're trying to do this the right way. Now, they're not, right? If they're doing it the right way, they would just cut all at once, but they're not doing it that way. But they're not even saying, I don't know. They're just going, we're doing it. And then coming back 6 months later and go, all right, we do it again. And that's even leading less to it because they're trying to sound forceful and knowledgeable when everyone goes, they don't know. So the fourth thing, and this is going to be a controversial one, is sharing the pain. A lot of companies did it well when they said, you know what? We're going to have to lay some people off or do furloughs, but we're also cutting management salaries by 30% and nobody's getting a bonus, right? And we're doing this and we're doing that, right? They were sharing the pain. They were saying, yes, we know that's impacting you and this is horrible. And here's what we're going to do. Okay. We're sharing the pain with you. That's critical. People want to know, hey, we're in this together and this isn't the you against me. Now, when you look at, again, let's do these layoffs, and they go, hey, we have to let go of 10,000 people. Whether you think that's right or wrong, they're doing it. But very few companies are going in and saying, you know what? And we're also making our executives take a pay cut or deny their bonus or not get a raise. Apple did it. You know, Tim Cook went in and said, you know what? I'm not, taking a raise or taking any of my bonuses because of this. Now, the cynical person, of which I can be at times, says things like, "Oh, well, I guess the guy who made 20 million isn't going to take his extra 2 million. Ooh, what a sacrifice." But it is. He could have very easily said, "No, I'm still going to take it." When you look at a company like Facebook, I'm really shredding them a lot. And to be honest, they deserve it. But, you know, they're going, "Hey, our stock's going up." Right? They're taking benefit from it while letting these people go. And that is not very much thing. So during the pandemic, there was a lot of sharing of the pain, right? Hey, I'm doing this, and the company's doing this, and we're asking you to do that type of thing, which is great, right? The companies again, people felt like you were in it together. They felt like you were all, while we were all suffering, you were suffering together. Maybe not at the same level, right? But you were all doing something. You were all doing your share to a certain point. Um, and I wouldn't worry about, oh, well, I've got to make sure they think it's fair and this and that, because you're never going to reach that point. But once you can show that it's being evenly dispersed, that's a little bit better. Um, so last week we talked about the Herman Miller CEO. You know, one of the things, she was like, hey, can't stay in pity city, that great comment. Um, People were like, "You're not sharing the pain with us." That's part of the backlash. Well, what are you giving up? You're making us do X or making us worry about Y. What are you giving up? Okay. So that sharing of the pain was an awesome thing that companies did during the pandemic that they stopped and kind of slipped back into that habit of, you know what, we won't worry about that so much and come up with our reasons for it. This fifth one, which I thought long and hard about this one because a lot of companies had processes before. Um, but I think what they found was they had been lulled into a certain sense of comfort with their processes. Things may not have been as fleshed out because being in the same building covered up for a lot of mistakes. Being in the same, you know, vicinity, they were able to cover up a lot of mistakes. But what one of the things you discover when you will go to a remote or a hybrid workforce is a lot of those things aren't easily covered up or they become exposed. Um, I wrote an article early on in the pandemic that I said, hey, you know, the crisis that managers were facing wasn't because we were asking them to do a lot of new stuff. It was because we exposed a lot of problems they had. You know, things like you should communicate and care about your employees. You know, all of a sudden they had to do this. And some of them were like, I've never done this before. Well, we should have been doing it all along. So these processes kind of what we learned, things that were covered up got exposed. Um, and the perfect example of this has to do with communication, right? So one of the things is when you're not working necessarily in the cube or the desk next to someone, right? You have to learn to communicate better. So if I don't, I have to be able to write things down and document them and do things a certain way to make sure that that communication is being done. I have to verify certain things. Um, the processes of using communication is another great example because all of a sudden we went from email, phone, and being next door to someone or being able to walk down the hall to now we had Slack, now we had chat, now we had Zoom, now we had all these different things. And a lot of places didn't, but should have started to create processes for it. The ways that you use that technology the best, right? Hey, send me a Slack when it's something that needs to be addressed, you know, fairly quickly and is small, but isn't, you know, something that can wait 2 weeks. Send me an email if it's something that can wait 24 hours. If it's something that you need an immediate thing, text me on my cell phone. All these different rules that this process for communication, you know, for productivity's sake, for sanity's sake, right? You know, and I try and do this with some people, you know, here's how I'm going to use email. I'm going to check email once or twice a day. So if it's something that needs an immediate response, email isn't it. If it's something that needs me to really think through, that's a great place for it. Okay. If it's something that you want, it's a little more informal, it's kind of a one quick question type of thing. And it's not an immediate need, but it can wait 8 hours. Send me a chat message. If it's something you need me immediately, you know, text my cell phone, right? Because I'll be able to check that. And all these different guidelines. Well, we never did that before. Now all of a sudden, we're starting to make those processes. Hey, here's how we're going to do Zoom meetings, and we learned we screwed up a lot. I screwed up a lot, but we started learning things like you know an hour long Zoom meeting. That's a lot to sit in front of a computer screen for an hour is a lot. So we're going to make these meetings 30 minutes or we're going to make them 25 because before we used to have time to walk between meetings to kind of process, digest, go to the bathroom, those type of things. You know, now we're going to do it because it's too easy to hop from Zoom call to Zoom call to Zoom call. Never go to the bathroom, never grab a glass of water, never just go stand outside and breathe for a minute. So, you know, we started changing processes and rules and we learned as we went and we figured it out. But a lot of companies went back to the old way and that wasn't very helpful. So you know, learning the value of these processes and then really continuing to refine and build on them and communicate them. So I will admit one of my frustrations is, you know, there's a client I work with who they're a Teams organization, they're a Microsoft organization. Um, and to me, Teams is the greatest thing in the world. Okay, maybe not the greatest thing in the world, but it's a really good tool because I can store information, I can categorize it, I can put files and links and all these things great in here and do chat. And it's really a very good tool. Yet people won't use it. or they'll, you know, send me emails when it could have been a quick thing. They'll go, "Hey, Brian, I need a response from this real quick. It's an email that I'm not checking." Right? Whereas if they would have sent me a team chat, it would have popped up, and I would have went, "Oh, okay, I can do this real quick," type of thing. Um, so figuring out those processes, continuing to build on them, continuing figuring out ways to communicate. Okay, if I can't just walk down the hall and ask, you know, Mary this question, is there a way that I can, you know, document that so she can look it up, right? Or put a file that we can all keep adding to, and then I can reference it. All those type of things, and having a system for it. Um, those are those were invaluable lessons that we've skipped back and we gone, oh, I don't want to say we got lazy, but part of it that is, you know, hey, I can force you back into the office so we don't have to fix these processes, which is probably going to be easier and something I'd rather do than, fixing the process, taking the time, having everyone adjust and adapt. And no doubt there's some pain with that, right? Learning a new tool and constantly using Teams or Slack or any of those other tools takes time. And there were so many of them out there. I was like, at one point, I had Zoom, I had Hangout, I had Slack, I had Teams, I had good. It was way too much, right? But organizations can figure that out. So again, those five things that really, um, were critical, that we did really, I don't want to say great, but we did much better during the pandemic. It's the increased communication, the focus on well-being, the admitting I don't know, sharing the pain among everyone, and the value of processes. Um, I think those things were a big part of that engagement bump we saw. And when we started backsliding, that's when we saw engagement going down. And I think it's actually going to be harder to fix because of that backslide, because people are going to be like, oh, we got to wait for the next emergency for them to do things right. Didn't they learn that that was what I wanted? Or didn't they learn that that was effective? Uh, So it's really important that we, you know, try and increase those things. Let's really build up that value in that communication. So that's it for today. Those are my Friday five for this LinkedIn Live. Again, I'd love to hear your comments. I'm going to post this. This will be available for people to watch. I'm also going to put it on YouTube if I can figure out how to do that quickly. And let me know if there's any other topics you want to address. But have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you soon.